My name is Ernie Sears. I'm 84 years old, have led a really interesting life from maybe when I was a young child actually, but certainly from 1960 with my first UFO experience. But since then I've been involved in what I would once have called impossible things. And these cover things like, I'm going to launch right into it and say, life after death. I've had personal experiences and I can assure you, no matter what you think or what you've seen or read, there is life after death. And it's a big subject all by itself. UFOs, yep, I've seen them, been inside them, conversed with the occupants. They always send me back with knowledge that I never had before, but I'm not told when I'm going to use it. But sometime along the way, I need that knowledge and I need to speak what I call the truth. My remit is the truth, so that all of you out there can understand a bit more about what we used to call the unseen world. Whatever it is, loosely called the paranormal, of course. You have to also remember or accept, which I do, in a funny way, we are being controlled. We are given all these things up to us to know what to do with them. Certainly, looking at the world around now, there's no way that people have grasped this. And if they don't grasp it very soon, there will be changes coming along. But as I said, a very interesting life. This is something that's meant to be. It's meant to show people that we go on forever, we don't die and dissolve. And also, in a funny way, what you do in this world today reflects on what you do after you die, and maybe in the future as well, because I'm also quite acceptable to things like reincarnation and that kind of thing, which a lot of people poo-poo. But there are thousands of us out there. I'm not unique by any means. We are having the same kind of experiences, and we're a different kind of race apart once we have that, because our minds are thoroughly opened, and what we would like to call care for others, even love for others, is the reigning emotion that we have. We care about people, we care about the world and its future. And we learnt this over the years because we accepted all the strange things that have happened to me as being perfectly natural, all meant to be, all part of the human species, all part of the past, and if we let it be, all part of the future. So I'd advise you to do what I do, read, look at things, understand them, let your mind assimilate them and use them for the good of the world. Have a look at my prompt sheet I've got here. I've got half a dozen which I made up before this program was mooted, you might say, and it's prompt sheets from the number of lectures I've given over the years, pieces out of that, ostensibly of my 8 abductions. And I don't know really whether I should start with 1933 when I was 9 years old, but that was when I had an out-of-body experience. We lived in Gosport in Hampshire, and I was quite ill at the time, in bed, feeling ill too, and the doctor was there, my mother speaking, and I could understand he was saying, let's see what he's like in the morning. If his temperature's gone down, then he's going to be all right. And I didn't really know what he was talking about. So anyway, they left the room, the bedroom, disappeared off, and I just lay there feeling really ill. I didn't care what happened to me. And the wallpaper in the bedroom was old-fashioned, what I call Victorian stuff, really. Great big black triangles and a pattern in the middle. And I looked at these black triangles and whatever, and I was being drawn into them, really drawn into the triangles. So the next thing I knew, I was going out of the bedroom door, and I went through the bedroom door. I didn't open it, I just went through it. And I was at the top of the stairs, and I thought, I'm going to tell Mum I'm flying. And so I floated down the stairs, all the way down the stairs, turned left where the lounge door was shut, went through the lounge door, and there was my mother and a neighbour sitting toasting their legs in front of the kitchen range, the old-fashioned kitchen range. And they yelled out, "Mum, look, I'm flying." And they never turned their heads at all. And I tried again, "Mum, I'm flying." No, and then psst, I was back in bed. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the morning and I felt all right. You know, like, well, okay. When my mother came up to see who I was and felt my head, she said, "Oh yeah, your temperature's down." I said, "Mum, I shouted at you last night because I flew down the stairs and through the door and you never took any notice of me." And she looked at me, and it was many years later when I remembered how frightened she looked when I said that. And many years later I went back to that and said, I've read about even parents and grandparents were abductees in previous generations. She knew what I was talking about. It scared her. So she said, "I think, son, you'll find that if you were meant to fly, God would have given you wings." "Oh, okay, Mum, but I did fly." So, all right, that was it. A couple of weeks later, I was up and about, and I thought, I'm going to prove to my mum that I did fly. And I was upstairs in the bedroom, and I went to the door, and I opened it, and went to the top of the stairs, and I jumped. Well, maybe I hit 2 or 3 steps on the way down. They were really steep stairs. And I finished up with my head crashing against the skirting board in the passage at the bottom, yelling my head off. Mother came rushing out of the lane and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I thought I could fly, Mum." "See, I told you you couldn't fly." I said, "Yeah, all right, Mum was always right, you know." That was that episode, out of the way. So what it was, it did show me in years later on, you could levitate and you could go through solid objects. Through my UFO experiences, I was shown that and told that, and I could do that. So that was the first thing. Then I was about 14, and that was in, let me have a look, 1937, yeah? Well, 1937 I was, anyway. And again, I was in bed, and I was asleep. And this gorgeous angel came towards me in the night, drifted towards me, like an angel would do if you knew a bit about angels. Lovely golden wings, drifted towards me, and I was standing up somehow. I wasn't sitting down. And she pressed herself against me and she kissed me. I don't often tell this story, but I'm going to tell it now. I had my first orgasm. I literally exploded. And I thought, oh, wasn't that wonderful? Because I felt all over like an explosion. And again, that was many years later when I re-looked at things and thought how aliens can change what they look like in order not to scare the abductee or the victim or whatever you call them. I didn't tell Mother about that one because I'd had an orgasm. Mum was coming up the stairs in the morning. My pyjamas were wet. I stuffed them under the pillow quick. So that remains a very firm memory. Now down here I've got something I can't quite understand. 1937 again, it says knife. Well, on my left wrist I've got a scar there. It's been there many years. I don't know how it, well, I don't know when it got there. I actually know that I was watching a knife coming towards me that hacked a triangular piece of flesh out of my wrist. And I looked at it and I wasn't feeling any pain wherever I was. And I could see the red and white corpuscles in there. And I looked at it and then all of a sudden it was gone, healed up. And I haven't got any memory of how, why or what apart from that. That comes back later on when there was a coincidence anyway. 1977, there was a great big gap between 1937 and 77, partly because I spent 5 years in the RAF during the war, partly because I had to go to work after I got demobbed and all these kind of things. So there were massive gaps there, but I kept up with UFOs because by then they'd been called, got away from the flying saucers story anyway, and they were UFOs. And I did have an experience of a sighting in 1960 when watching two meteor jets coming up towards this object I've been watching in the sky for about half an hour, a glowing object in broad daylight. And as they approach it, I managed to run to a vantage point where I could see it all, and they approached it and it turned on end and totally vanished in the clear blue sky. I was quite intrigued because I had thought it might have been an aircraft somehow battling against a strong wind. That was in 1960. I got into a phone box that was nearby and phoned up Thorney Island Aerodrome, which was the base for these meteor jets. And all I asked the guy on the control tower was, could you tell me what that object was those two meteor jets were chasing? And he said, sir, you didn't see any jets, you did not see any object. And I just said, well, come on now, I was in the Air Force, I know what meteor jets are, I just want to know what the object was. He said, I'll repeat, you saw no jets, no object. Okay. You might not understand this, not unless you've had experiences. That episode changed my life totally on that day, in that seconds when he said that. And I set out to find why he lied to me. Still doing that these days, only in a bigger scale, you might say. So it wasn't an abduction, but it was a prelude to a lot of things. Okay. I've got a range of 1977 now, quite a long gap in between things, but life had changed quite a lot in jobs and the fact that I got divorced and all this kind of thing you go through in life. But I just happened to be out in the garden in Portswood on a Friday night in November 1977. We had cats. I'd got married again, and my lady was a cat fanatic, so we sort of acquired 5 cats from different people. I'd got out in the garden about 7 o'clock on this Friday evening, just put the cats out and let them run around. Lovely clear blue sky. There was a moon over there in the distance. I looked around and looked right over my head, and there to my amazement was a huge triangle hovering. A triangle, and it looked metallic. It seemed to have ribs underneath and four things in the corners of the triangle, just hanging there. And I turned my head and shouted to my wife, quick, hurry up, come and see this. And I turned back and it had totally gone. So I thought I must be going nuts, you know. So I went indoors and I telephoned the police, the local airport, the newspaper. No reports. No one had anything to report or whatever. So I found a very close friend of mine. He was a jazz pianist, something I've been into for years. Very good friend, and he was into UFOs. I phoned him to ask if he'd by chance been out in his garden, because he lived not too far from me. The answer was he was out. He wasn't there. So I thought, oh damn. Frustrating, because I knew I'd seen this thing and it was solid, you know. But where did it go to? Next morning, I phoned him. Monty was his name, by the way. I phoned him again, yeah, and he was there. Monty, I said, you weren't out in your garden about 7 o'clock last night, were you? He said, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, I wasn't in my garden, but three musicians and myself were driving along the M27 at Bursledon. We were going to a music gig in Portsmouth. A radio gig in Portsmouth, playing jazz, you know. And we saw this big triangle up in the sky there, about 7 o'clock, and we were looking at it, and it was moving about the sky in little short bursts of speed. And every time it moved, it left a little trail behind it. After a while, all of us were peering out the windows and going along the motorway. We thought we'd better pull in and have a look at it. It was a bit dangerous doing that like that. So we got out and we all looked at this thing, and it was still there, and all of a sudden it made one last little zip and was gone, disappeared. So they got back in the car and off to the gig. We had a long chat about it afterwards, of course, and I found around the various places the same answers. Even the aerodrome we had then at Hampshire reported nothing in the sky over their aerodrome. They had no planes up. Well, this was no plane as I would know it. So that was okay. Another sort of fact along the way that was making my mind open more and more. And then after that we got round to 1978 in January, when there were reports in our local Southern Echo of people being pursued by a large, silent, oval object, black with lights round the edge. A young couple were featured in the Echo. They'd been followed twice in the New Forest the previous 2 nights, where they'd been to visit their grandparents, I believe. And the woman was quite terrified by it, because this thing kind of hovered over them, and they stopped, and it stayed there and hung in the sky. And then they put their foot down and wanted to get home out the way. And this thing went with them. And it went all the way to where they lived a few miles away. And this had happened 2 nights running, exactly the same procedure. So I found that quite interesting. In actual fact, I've got a newspaper cutting not far away from my hand at the moment, where the people reported this. Another lady reported another one too, on the same nights. And the authorities and the police said, well, we've had no reports and we don't know what it was. Left it at that. On this 3rd night, we saw this big light coming up from the Isle of Wight through our lounge window. My wife saw it first. Hey, look at that light, she said. I said, good Lord, it's big, isn't it? And it was moving very slowly from the Isle of Wight towards our house. And we ran outside and we watched this great big black oval object coming over slower than a cyclist on a bike. And I knew from my RAF experiences and whatever, no plane could do that. It would have fallen out of the sky. Over the head it went, and I looked up at it and there was no noise, and there was a cabin light in the front, what I thought a big cabin light, and all little lights round the edges. And the lights were blue, green, red. But oddly enough, I got the impression they weren't the same colours as ours. I called them anemic at the time, but anyway, they were there. And this thing just gradually disappeared over my head and my wife's head. I ran indoors and I phoned up one of these couples that had seen this thing on the previous nights, because they were in the paper and I got hold of their phone number. I said, I think I've seen that thing you saw. And the chap said, it's here now. I said, wait a minute, it's here now. It's going round over our garden. I said, it's only just left me. He said, yeah, we got the neighbours out looking at it. He said, and it's just going round, flashing all the lights round the side. And then it disappeared, vanished. So that was really something. On the following night, we saw this light coming over again. Same time, round about somewhere between 6 and 7, coming towards the house. Come on, I said, we're going to go out and have a good look at this thing. I got hold of a pair of binoculars and a camera in the meantime, and we rushed out in the garden, and there it was, silent, huge, just coming over the top. And I looked at it through my binoculars, couldn't see much because the sky was dark at that time, January. So, and this was black, so you could hardly see anything except the lights on the one in the front. No noise except maybe a faint humming that I might have imagined, but not necessarily. We were looking at it and saying, what is it, what is it, my wife and I? And all of a sudden, chung. I laughed at this afterwards because I imagined that a ray had flashed from this thing onto me. And I laughed at it. Oh, don't be so stupid, you know. But all of a sudden, I'm in somewhere, metallic, and I'm going by all the planets in the solar system. Mars, the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn. Absolutely gorgeous. Just as though I was a tourist laying off the planet and going right round. And then I was on the ground again, all in what seemed to be seconds, and my life had changed again. I felt different. This thing was still there, but it began to move away. And I've never forgotten the feeling I got then. I've only ever come across one person in ufology that felt the same. I was crying. I said, don't go. I want to know you more. You are my brothers. But it didn't make any difference. This thing went slowly, disappeared. Several strange things happened that night. It's as though you got blocks in your memory. And I found out many years later, but it was probably true. They do these sort of things. I never spoke to my wife about it. She never spoke to me. Life went on. Very strange. But a little while after that, I got round to something more dramatic. Well, that was January 1978. A very dramatic experience, but there was more to come. That same year, I was quite friends with a well-known television comedian called Derek Roy. And he rang me one day in the year. He was into UFOs as well. He'd seen them abroad in South Africa, apparently. But whatever it was, he was into that kind of thing. Ernie, he said, I'm dying. And I said, don't be silly, Derek. He was a comedian, you know. You can't be dying. Yes, he said, I've been to the doctors. I've got cancer. And the doctor said to me, eat, drink, and be merry. So he said, I don't think I've got long to go, really. I said, I can't believe this. Anyway, Ernie, I've got to do something about it, because it's not going to cure me what they're doing for me. I've made an appointment with a healer in Southampton. Now, we didn't drive a car that time. Would you run me over to this lady in Sholing, which is another part of Southampton? Yeah, all right, I said. So we made an arrangement, and I drove him over there. And a lovely cottage this lady lived in, very nice old-fashioned cottage. And she came to the door. Oh, hello, she said. Are you Derek's friend? I said, yes, I am. What are you into? I said, what do you mean, what are you into? Have you had any... Are you a healer? I said, no. I don't know anything at all about healing. So she said, oh, you sure? I said, yeah. You must be into something. I'm picking up something from you. UFOs? Ah, she said, UFOs. No wonder, she said. And are you sure you're not a healer? I said, no. Would you like to come in and join in the healing with Derek and myself? She said. Yeah, all right. I said, you know, this experience. So we sat in this nice little room there. One of the funny things that happened, they're little things but are important, that Derek had bought himself a crucifix. You know, when you're dying, you turn to all sorts of things. He wasn't religious. He bought himself a nice crucifix, and he had it in a box at the time of this healing we went to. The lady said, I'm going to bless this crucifix, Ernie. I said, all right. So I watched her, and she went across the mantelpiece and put the box down there and put the crucifix in the top. There we are, she said. And we got on with this healing, which was quite strange straight away, because, yeah, thank you. This started happening in my hand, and she looked at me. She said, are you sure you're not a healer? I said, quite sure. All right, she said, well, we'll get on with the healing. So we did. And the session finished after about half an hour. And she went across to the mantelpiece to pick up the cross in the box. She didn't touch it. She said, Ernie, come over here. And I walked over, and the cross had gone through the box, was underneath. So I thought, hey, that's weird. Interesting, but weird. And I went again about 3 times to a session there with Derek and this lady who was called Phyllis. She was a very nice lady. This 4th time I was there, my hand was absolutely playing up. It was really going all over the place, you know. I couldn't control it, and I didn't like it. I didn't like to feel that I was being controlled for whatever reason. And I looked up in the ceiling because I was being pushed back in this armchair by a hand, which I couldn't see. And I was looking up in the ceiling. There's all these people in the ceiling. Remember, this is a small room, but there may have been a whole crowd of people, and they're all talking at once. And they've all got strange faces, similar faces to each other, and they were in long white robes, all chattering away at me in some language. And I sat up, and I said, I don't like this, Philip. So she said, why? And I told her, oh, she said. I said, I could do with some water to drink. Yeah, all right, Ernie, I've got a jug here with water. And she poured it, and I downed this jug of water. She said, Ernie, I think you're going to become one of us. So I said, oh, I don't know about that. You could be a medium. What do you mean? I said, talking to the dead. She said, oh, no, I don't fancy that. If I'm going to be anything, I quite like the idea of healing, helping people, you know. We talked about it anyway. What we'll do, we'll have a special session, she said, with myself and Phyllis and her partner, who was also a healer, and we'll just see what develops, because I still think you could be a medium. I said, well, I don't want to be a medium, whatever. So she said, I think you're going to be a healer because of your hand, you know, this is a sure sign. So I said, righto, I'm going to be a healer. Do I advertise? Do I put cards in all the little shops and that sort of thing, get people to come and see my healing? Laughing, you know. No, you don't have to do any of that, she said. They'll find you, you know. They'll find you patients. And I said, all right. And I drove a car down, as you know. And when I left the place with Derek, this hand on the steering wheel wasn't mine. It was feeling most peculiar. And I wasn't happy about that. And I was visiting my two ladies who were in my little UFO group from there. I got there on that same afternoon and they said, you all right? And I said, why? You're not Ernie. I said, what do you mean you're not Ernie? Your voice is different. Well, I said, I feel different, but I'm still Ernie. So we sat being talking anyway, and I told her all about this, what was happening. They were quite fascinated by it, these two ladies, because we were all into the paranormal by then, but, you know, it's one of those things. And I was thirsty still, and I asked for a glass of water. They gave me the water, and it shot out my hands and smashed against the fireplace. You know, they were quite startled. I said, don't worry about it. But I rang up Phyllis, because I was a bit perturbed about this. And she said, Ernie, all you've got to do is to say, I am not ready yet, and you'll find that will go away. Really? Is that all I've got to do? I said, yeah. So I sat there feeling a bit strange and saying, I'm not ready yet, please go away. And it did, it died away. My hand stopped vibrating and whatever. And when I went home to my wife, one of the first things I said, I got myself involved in this healing. I knew you would, she said. I knew when you went out you were going to get involved. So, well, apparently I am. And from then on, people did come to me. The first patient that came to me was a cat, which a lady brought, and it had an abscess on its stomach. And I laid it on my office table, because I was a theatrical agent in those days. I cleared all the table off, laid this cat on the table with its back there, and it looked up at me. Strange, really. I looked into its eyes and I thought, you know more than I do, you know. Just put my hand on there and the vibrations and it went. So I said to the lady, let me know how you get on with the cat then, you know. She rang me the next day. She said, I don't know what you've done, she said, but you've healed my cat. She said, the abscess is totally healed. You can come round and do my migraines. So, and it started on from there, healing. I was a healer, you know. I started giving lectures. One was to a back pain association, which was quite intriguing actually, because I actually held two ladies in front of all these consultants in the hospital, just with a finger like that, and they couldn't understand it. And these people, I've got their affidavits still. They'd had back pains for 35 years, and they were under all sorts of treatment by consultants. It wouldn't go away, but it went away in seconds. And these consultants said to me, you didn't use manipulation. I said, I'm not allowed to. I said, I'm a healer. I'm not like you people, physiotherapists and whatever. So that was how that went on. Anyway, I was a healer. Also, a little bit later than that, that would have been in 1980, I began to have strange dreams. I'd be sitting up in bed of a night time with my wife there asleep. There'd be a big light in the room, in the bedroom, and I was sat up in bed. And the first one was an eye, a large eye that appeared from behind the wardrobe in the far corner of the bedroom. And it came towards me, and it hovered right in front of my nose. And at the time, inwardly, I laughed. I thought, now, are you supposed to be looking at me? Am I looking at you? I never said that. The thoughts ran through my head. But it was there, you know, very strange. And then it went back, disappeared. Next morning I said to my wife, I had a weird dream last night, and I told her, oh yes, it was weird, wasn't it? I said, yeah, there you go. A little bit later, I was in the same place in the bedroom, sitting up in bed, light in the room, which is another point I'm going to come to in a minute. And there were two men Not in the bedroom, but I seemed to be in a church, looking down in the nave. I'll be where the altar was, you know. They were holding a big ball of light between them, really big, and it had gold and blue rays coming out of it, and they were going through felt like every bit of my body, every molecule. And it was a little bit painful, and I just thought, I think I'm dying. So I pinched myself. It didn't go away, it was still there, and I fell back in the bed and slept. The next morning, same thing. I said, I had one of those weird dreams last night. What do you have this done? Told me. Oh yeah, you know, she was quite perturbed by it. But it was some years later when I read about a lady called Betty Andreasen. A lot of people will know about her. She was taken on a journey by aliens to a strange city of crystal buildings and whatever, and she finished up in front of a giant eagle bird of some kind, giant bird. And she was standing in front of this, and it was hot. And it was hot because there were all these blue and gold rays coming out of this bird, going through all the parts of her body. And I thought, gosh, that's what I had. But this was different, you know. And because she was a very religious lady, nothing against that, but she was, she said that she'd been given contact with God's son. She always said it was his son. Now, I sort of got a different view on it. I think what it was S-U-N, a sun that was connected with this bird, and all the rays were coming in. It didn't make a difference, somehow it was happening. And I thought, oh, it happened to me. What's going on? Well, in 1980 still, there was a strange incident which didn't exactly frighten my wife, but made her feel that what I was going through was actually genuine. These things were happening, because it didn't happen to me, it happened to her. And I came home one night, and she was sitting in the lane. She said, Ernie, I've had a very strange experience tonight, and I'm a bit frightened by it. So what's happening? Well, you know the stereo in the corner, which her father had built for me, by the way. This is essential I say that. She said, and all of a sudden, it was unplugged, she said. This strange voice came out of it. It's really? I said, what did it say then? Well, I couldn't understand it. It was like talking in a different language, and it was going too fast. And before I could stop myself, considering the machine was switched off, she said, can you slow down a bit? I can't understand you. And the voice stopped. Oh, I said, it's one of those paranormal things that's happening there, you know. Couldn't explain it. I asked her father, he built the machine. He said, impossible. If it was unplugged, it would not have worked. So I said, okay. Well, I also read about those kind of things happening to other people in the years to come. Same thing, voices coming out of shut off equipment, you know, things like that. We get along to 1996. There was an eclipse of the moon on this particular night, and it was all publicised in the papers. And I lived in Netley still at that time, and went and sat out in the garden to watch this eclipse with a cup of coffee and a sandwich. Sat in the garden. There it was, gradually going brown and disappearing and whatever, and slowly coming back again. And it was a bit boring, really. So before it had all finished, I thought, I'm going to bed. It was midnight by then. I'm going to bed and going to sleep. So I did. I went to bed, went to sleep. Next morning I woke up, I felt absolutely dreadful. I felt as though I'd run 100 miles. And I couldn't quite make up my mind what was going on. And I thought, it couldn't have been an abduction, could it? No, of course not. Later on, I got up with difficulty, had a shave and a wash, still felt absolutely shattered. Had some coffee, walked down the road. I thought that might wake me up because I felt really dreadful still. Did a bit of shopping, and as I was walking along, I was prodding my left ear. Something was in there, and I pulled out wax, but the wax was red and green stripes. Oh yeah, it's weird, you know. But it stopped. I kept poking away at it. I thought, no, just as you would do. I came back home and I was still feeling so tired that I thought I'd sit on the settee and just rest with another cup of coffee. I'd got divorced by then, by the way, and so I was on my own at the time. I sat there and I began to feel very, I don't know, not dizzy, but my mind was wandering around, and all of a sudden I got flashbacks in my mind. Little things kept coming in, little pictures. And they explained several experiences I'd had in past years. They explained them so I could understand them. Now, one was when my wife, when we were married in the 70s, we were going out to a place called Romsey in Hampshire. We used to have a habit of driving out into the country on Sundays and have a cream tea and something like that, quite nice. We finished up at a fire station in Romsey. Now, I knew the fire station very well because I had a blind boy I was treating just across the road from there, who incidentally got better suddenly years later, but whatever. There was a fire station, and in this memory that I had, I'd been shown, there was a man showing us the fire engines, you know, all red, brass, very shiny and all the lot. And then he took us through a door at the back of what I thought was the station then, and we came into a place like a huge aquarium, and right up to some height were glass, what you see goldfish in, that kind of thing. And they were piled up on top of each other, which you don't do in aquariums, and into each one was a pipe with bubbles coming out of it. And in each glass thing there, I can't remember what you call those. A fish tank, anyway. There was one fish laying there, comatose, absolutely silent. And I just got the impression that these bubbles were like nutrients going in to feed the fish, you see. But it wasn't that at all. This flashback was somebody telling me that in actual fact they were hybrids, and some of them were your hybrids too. And they were laying there being fed nutrients until they grew to a certain size, and then they could become a mixture of a human and an alien. That was it. Well, it made sense to me, and a little while later I read a similar abductee having a similar situation, about seeing a hybrid floating in a tank, and he knew that it was one of his offspring, and apparently this is what was happening to me. I was aware of that, of course, since the angel, whatever. And this other abductee I read about called it was an incubarium. And it's stuck with me ever since. That's what it was. Now then, this eclipse of the moon I'd had the night before, I began to think I couldn't have been the only one to go through what I'd seen, because I remembered this eclipse of the moon turned into something else. Instead of being a light in the sky, it had turned into something else, no longer the eclipse of the moon. And I began to ring around colleagues in the UFO thing, who I knew when the eclipse of the moon was on, were stationed on various hills up the Meon Valley and various places. And I rang them all. None of them had seen anything. So I said, well, I remember this object there, orange, and I don't remember any more at the moment. Immediately, I got another flashback, straight away. Yeah, all right, yeah. I was in a room. There was a long window there, and there was a table laying there in between me and the window. And all around me were maybe 4 or 5 very small creatures, humanish, tubby. They were wearing blue uniforms, I believe. They wouldn't have had blue skins, I don't think. And they were jostling me towards the window. And I'm sitting there sort of reliving this. I don't want to go, I said, you know, jostling me towards the window. Eventually they got me on the table, and looking in the window were two of the most cadaverous features I'd ever seen, looking in at me. And when you feel that most aliens are very sharp pointed jaws and big eyes, these were like almost like skeletons, you know, skinny arms and all the lot. And they were at the window, and then I was going through the window up to where in the sky was a triangular object, just hovering there, not very far up. We went in through the bottom of it. Incidentally, this is something that came up afterwards, but they were explained to me that when these aliens took me, there were three of them, and they had one on each side of me, not touching me, just there, and one in front, and I was going up in a kind of a gravity field. We went in through the bottom of this triangle, and I've always said it was like going through jello. It wasn't a door at all, you just went through it, like that. I don't remember any more about that. It just blank. Next minute I was back in my room, and I realised it was my room. This long window was merely the window to my bedroom, and the table in front of it was my dressing table. So that's where I'd been when they took me. That was very plain to me, made plain to me maybe. Then I thought, how am I going to explain this then? It was so real. I began to try and find out if anyone else had seen this object in the sky. No one, no, nothing at all about it, whatever. I rang up the local authorities and said, have you got any reports of that? Amazingly, the next night in my Daily Echo, there's a report by two what they called amateur astronomers. They were about 5 miles away from me at a place called Stubbington in a field. They were watching the eclipse of the moon with a telescope. And all of a sudden, this orange object they'd been watching in the sky turned into a triangle and whizzed towards them and over the top and disappeared. And there was no more about that at all. They'd been to the police, actually, local police reported it, and they said, we haven't had any reports of anything like that. But these two young lads, that's what they'd seen, so that kind of confirmed for me. I wasn't going nuts, I actually had that experience. Right, we're still in 1998. How can I put this? No, I won't put it anyway, I'll just tell you like it was. I had my lady friend over for some healing, because I was still doing the healing then, you know. She was in some trouble with shoulders and arthritis and whatever. She sat in my lounge on the end of the settee like I am here, and I was there sitting next to her, and I gave her healing. It was quite good, you know. And out of the corner of my eye, something was disturbing me, and I sort of looked out the corner of my eye. In the lounge was a huge angel, golden wings, glowing, stood there, so big she would have been impossible to fit in my lounge. I said to my lady, do you see that? She said, what? Never mind, I said, I'll tell you in a minute. And it was still there. And I did the healing, and the healing was extremely intense. It was so intense that, partly to do with this angel thing, I cried, I burst into tears. What are you crying for? I said, that was an absolutely wonderful healing. I said, you're not going to believe this, I told her. She said, really? Well, if you say so. She said, that was it. 2 days after that, I happened to be watching what we used to call a Kilroy programme one morning. I didn't usually watch it, but I happened to switch it on this morning. And it was headed, Do You Believe in Angels? And it caught my attention. And they had various people on there who claimed they'd seen angels and whatever, and skeptics and all that. This lady came on. She said, my husband, who died some years ago, she said, when I knew he was dying, I came in the house one day, and I walked by the lounge door and looked in there to see how he was, and he was sat in his armchair. Behind him was standing a huge golden angel with her arms round him and on his head. And she looked at me, or it looked at me, and for some reason or other, this lady said, I just shook my head and scurried onto the kitchen. When I got there, I thought, I couldn't have seen an angel, could I? No, she thought. And she went back, and the angel was still there, and it said in its mind, don't worry, come on, give me some help up there, come on. Oh dear. It said something to her that kind of made her consoled, and accepting this angel that was there, that she knew he was going to die, but he was going to go peacefully. And then it went like that. So the coincidence was almost too much, really, but it happened. So of course it took me back to my angel and all that kind of thing, that other people were seeing these. And the funny thing is, when I was sorting out this program yesterday, going through sheets of paper, I found I'd forgotten it. I had a big sheet of paper out of the Psychic News back in 1996, something like that, and it was headed "Encountering an Angel Unaware" by Ernie Sears. I'd written that for Psychic News, and it was a whole page, and it was about all my angel experiences, like I've been telling you just now. So I put it on one side. I thought it might be useful. But yeah, that was another angel episode. We get around to 1999. I'd been writing a letter to a friend of mine in the USA, and it was just about getting on for midnight, and I thought I'd better pack up now. And I was just sitting in my lounge and turned the light out. As I went out through the lounge door, I had a habit of looking at the clock across the room. Yeah, 5 to 12. That was okay. And off I went to bed. I woke up in the morning. Once again, as before, I was dog-tired. I felt absolutely shattered. And I thought, oh God, not again, surely. I can't remember anything about it, no. So I was suddenly impelled to pick up my pen, and I always remember this, it was on the back of the letter I'd written to the lady, and I scribbled like mad down there. And these are the actual originals that I wrote, and I kept it because it means a lot. And I probably have to put my glasses on for that. Is that okay? Yeah. First of all, my lady friend and I used to speak in the mornings, you know, just say, how was your day yesterday, whatever. And this is what I did this particular morning, before I started scribbling, actually. Let me think about that. Yeah, no. I scribbled these pages first, actually, like mad. I'm going to read part of it out to you because some of it is quite personal. It was the 9th of April, 1999. This happened. And I've got 5 to 12 down here. All right. As I wrote it, I was being told this subconsciously. Here comes that big light again, suddenly, out in the garden. Rushed, because always felt it was going before we will see it closer. And they're referring to the 1978 one where this big light came over. They reminded me that had happened. I don't forget it, it was important. Scar, reason no memory of blood, etc., was touched with a rod and closed almost immediately, not before seeing the open cut. Scar has always been almost indistinguishable, hence no one commented on it. You were programmed, as you have recently thought, to forget the encounter. Other scenarios substituted. We will again contact through Jamie, that was a member of the Southampton UFO group, who had lots of abduction experiences and very much other things which you might say were connected with life after death in two persons' presence. I've actually got it on tape, what he said. We all sat looking at each other in amazement. I might tell you about that later on. We will again contact through Jamie, but at some length. You will all recall, referring to the two other people that were listening to Jamie saying what he said. Then they rush on to the interior of this craft that I was in 1978. Not smooth, ribbed. Speak to Steve, read tape. That was a tape we had at the group that disappeared from the tape recorder before I could get it out in the presence of 9 people. Never seen it since. You wish to hear Jamie to see video. This is all, you know, coming at me like mad. We are using Kevin. Oh, he's my healer up in Watling. Work on your health. Allow us, let all bias go. At night, last night, hence mood today, as hitherto, they're referring to the fact I felt shattered due to where I was the night before. Yes, something. Use your words. These are not alien, so understood. We have to tell you your high state of awareness is due to the internal feeling between you and your loved one. The time is ripe for deeper communications, even contact. We hope to demonstrate on your television spot. Keep your mind aware of this. Shine the light. Back to it again. It is not just something you share with her, it is symbolic. The way will be made easier, although may not appear so at the time. You are bonded. That is our way, our word. Continue. The contact is fading. We will communicate again, or visit. Did not Stryber call us the visitors? We are such, not permanent. Planet too violent. The planet lives, so it is affected. You rape it, it rebels. You breed brutality, kill spirituality. Soon we may help. Many are ready. You are losing the link. Go now. Keep the pen by you. Gizmo is attuned to you. It is aware. That was my little chinchilla at the time.